We've decided that it's time to move away from raising meat rabbits on our homestead, and today we'll be processing our last 2 rabbits. So let me talk to you about why we've decided it's not for us and show you our processing setup in case you want to try raising meat rabbits for your own homestead. Now, I just want to be clear that we are not going to be showing the actual processing of the meat rabbits. So if that is something that you were a little worried about seeing, that's not going to happen in this video. And if you did want to see something like that, I'll leave some of my favorite videos that I've ever found on processing meat rabbits. I'll leave those down in the description so you can go check out those other channels because there are lots of good videos on it. Now, the first reason for deciding to move away from meat rabbits is that we kept getting small litter sizes and our does weren't very good mothers. Now, I will say that this can be figured out by just trying a different breed, getting a different doe, a different couple of does. This is definitely something that can be worked around. But when I talk about number 2, you'll see why this took us a little while to figure out that this was a recurring problem with our does. And at this point, it's just not something that we're super interested in trying to fix. But this does bring up the breeding aspect. So unlike meat chickens where you can order chicks online and have them shipped to your post office or incubate chicks in your home, meat rabbits need to be bred. In order to get kits, you need to breed a pair of meat rabbits. And we found this to be difficult. This wasn't as straightforward as we thought, and it actually took us a couple of different tries to actually get it right. You've got to worry about if your rabbits are overweight, if they're in good health, and these are all good things. They're fine, but they did take extra time when it's a lot more streamlined to raise something like a meat chicken, in our opinion. And with that being said, we just didn't enjoy the aspect of breeding meat rabbits. So this isn't exactly a negative, but it's just not something that we actually enjoyed doing. So that does add to the reason for why we're not going to be continuing. Now, the number 2 reason why we think that meat rabbits are just not for us has to do with our weather and does kind of tie into number 1. Now, we live in a very hot climate. We are in the deep south of the United States. And rabbits can go temporarily sterile when you're reaching those temperatures that are above 80 degrees. Now, of course, our temperatures are not always above 80 degrees. Of course, it cools down at night and things like that. But we really do have such a hot climate that you have to go out pretty early in the day for about half of the year in order to hit that temperature requirement so that doesn't happen. And for us with small children, getting out and getting this done at 6:30, 7 in the morning, it can be difficult. So when our summers finally do start to cool off, it's still getting up to those high temperatures pretty early in the morning. So the window in the mornings to get out there and get the breeding done, it's not a very big window. And we've got 4 young children, so this was really difficult for us to manage. So there were a couple months where you just really couldn't get the breeding done. But then you've got the months on either side of that where maybe you could, but you really have a short time limit each day to get it done. And we found ourselves with only about 6 months out of the year where we could really get any breeding done. Then we're getting small litter sizes. The does are not very good moms and the babies are not making it. And it just turned into a not very fun time. If you live in a place like us with really hot weather, that is not to say that meat rabbits won't work for you, but it is going to take some planning and really being disciplined to get out there and get those breedings done really early in the morning when those temperatures aren't so high. For us, with having all these little kids and other responsibilities, having a dairy cow at this point, it just became too difficult, and we're finding that we're not making the time to make it happen, and then it's really not worth it to have the meat rabbits. Another thing that we don't love so much about keeping meat rabbits is the year-round care of the breeding trio. Now, of course, growing out the kits to the size that you would want to process, it doesn't really take that much time. It's relatively short, but the rest of the time you do have to keep that breeding trio healthy. You've got to keep them at the correct weight, deal with any sickness or injuries or things like that, and just the day-to-day care of those rabbits. And while that's not a bad thing, it's not something that we enjoyed. We found that we really prefer the quick turnaround of meat chickens or feeder pigs or even a steer from our dairy cow. We know that we're going to keep that dairy cow anyway because she's giving us that milk every single day, but from a breeding trio, even when you don't have kits that they're growing, you're still taking care of them, especially in those summer months when you're not able to breed them, like for us. Keeping the breeding trio year-round was just not something that we enjoyed, so adding that to all the other things, you're starting to see where I'm going here. We have been raising meat chickens for about 4+ years now. We have a really great system for doing that. It's really easy for us at this point. And so we find that meat chickens, meat rabbits, the flavor of the product that you get, it's all very similar. And so since we don't enjoy raising the meat rabbits, it doesn't seem worth it to be doing rabbits and chickens when the flavor profile is very similar and we actually enjoy raising the meat chickens more. So for all of those reasons, we don't think that they're best for us, but we do think that they're a super great protein source, a super great animal to raise for meat. If you've got a small backyard, a small property, you don't want to deal with chickens, you don't mind these things that we're talking about, especially if you live in a climate that's maybe cooler, meat rabbits are not a bad option. They're a fantastic option, but after a couple years, we've just decided that they're not for us. So I'm going to take you over there to where my husband is setting up our processing equipment, and he's going to run through the different things that he uses, how he sets it up. This is such a simple process. I will say it is so much more simple than what you would use or maybe like to have for processing meat chickens. This is way easier. So he's going to show you everything that he likes to have and hopefully help you out if you're thinking of getting started with meat rabbits yourself.
So we start with a rebar. We use the rebar method to process and dispatch the rabbits. So we just have a simple piece of rebar here that we just put across the neck, and we step on it on either side and then pull up on the rabbit, and that dispatches the rabbit pretty much instantaneously. After that, we take the rabbit over here to the gambrel. We have a gambrel here and a tarp backdrop here to stop all the blood from hitting our rabbit hutch. So after the rabbit's dispatched, I can hang the rabbit's feet up in here and the rabbit's hanging upside down. At that point, I take this knife right here. It's my favorite knife that I use for dispatching chickens as well as cutting the head off the rabbit. Use a very, very sharp knife to cut right through the rabbit's neck. You'll see it's very, very easy to go through. So at that point, I will just slice through the rabbit's neck, and then, like I said, that's all I use this knife for. After the rabbit has bled out here, at that point, it's time to process and take the fur off the rabbit. The X-Acto knife is what shines here. Just a very simple X-Acto knife. At that point, you'll make an incision around the legs, and then you're just going to, not without going into much detail, it basically just comes off as a big sleeve. So you just need an X-Acto knife for most of the processing. The other tool that I have here is some sort of shears. The rabbit bones are pretty skinny and easy to cut through, so even garden shears, real small garden shears can be used. These are for cutting chicken bones. So at that point, I'll be able to cut off the legs, and then on the hind legs as well as the front legs down below, and then everything will just come off. And then again, all of the further processing inside, where I actually want to go inside of the rabbit, I use the X-Acto knife again, make a small incision in the gut, and be able to pull all the guts out of the rabbit that way. Once all of the insides are outside and it's cleaned up, I would have a hose here set up right now, but my kids are actually using the hose for the splash pad. But I will have one here when I process them to rinse the rabbits inside and outside. So once the rabbits are nice, good, and clean, at that point, I'll take them out, and just like with a chicken, you're going to want to give them a really cold bath. Normally, if I'm doing a lot of rabbits, I'll put them in a cooler with ice in it. In this case, I'm only going to be doing 2 today, so I just have a pot of cold water that can hold the 2 rabbits full of ice. Once I'm done with that, I just bring the rabbits inside it and cut them up.
Also, you need a trash bag for all the things that you don't want to keep. We forgot to mention that.
Even though we're not continuing with rabbits on our homestead, I love to process them over chickens, and we think that they would be a fantastic addition to any small homestead that's really looking to increase their meat production.